4, 3, 2, 1. We are live. And then while we are live, my camera is acting crazy. This is not the kind of a start that I would want. But when the start is messy, the rest of it goes well. So let's continue with the conversation here. Today we have with us Hana Chappatte. Chappatte is the founder and CEO of HYBR. HYBR is an award-winning accommodation platform transforming the young renter landlord rental experience. So as you can imagine, I picked this description from their website, and Hana is here with us to break this down to explain what HYBR is. So with that, let's welcome Hana. Hana, welcome to PropTechBuzz. How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hana, I bumped onto your profile and I found Hyper as an interesting proposition. And thank you for agreeing to be on my podcast. I am here to understand your journey of Hyper. But before we get into the meatier stuff of Hyper, why don't we start with your career trajectory and then your transition story of building Hyper?
Of course. So I was a student at the University of Bristol. I studied liberal arts. So I majored in English, where I did history, philosophy, ethics. And I thought in my final year that I'd go on to do consulting. I thought anyone switched on goes into consulting, law, or banking. But I ended up walking out of my PwC assessment center because I thought this is not the world for me. And I was fixated with how awful my experience was when I first arrived in Bristol as a student. I've been handed the most amount of money I'd ever seen in a maintenance loan with no idea how to budget. I was trying to understand the rental jargon around deposits, tenancy agreements, guarantors with no idea what it meant and who to go to for support. And I was just trying to find a place to live. And there was no brand that resonated with the first time renter experience. As a student, I'd been involved in a lot of ambassador programs. And so I knew, the power of mobilizing the student community around a brand and a cause that they cared about. And how it was really all about building relationships with the consumer and that early touch point in that life cycle. So such a valuable community, and yet there's no one focusing on the space. And in my final year, I started doing a few focus groups with the landlords that I'd rented from at university to understand their pain points from their side. And I realized that as a landlord, you have two options. No matter if you're a huge institutional landlord or a private landlord with one or two properties, you're either going to use a classified site like Rightmove, where you get inundated with mostly ineligible inquiries, or you're going to use an agent of some sort that does everything for you. But because they have quite high cost operating models, it's very expensive and not a scalable solution. So both sides were broken, and I could really see what I wanted to create, the solution I wished I'd had at university. So that's how it all started. And I launched HYBR as soon as I graduated at the end of 2019.
How lovely. Usually, this is my favorite question to all my founders, not my founders, all the founders that I talk to. Whenever they start with a business, usually the idea that they germinate and the idea eventually that turns into a business, there is a stark difference because it evolves and because you get market validation and then you change your proposition. So has the idea of Hyper as of today evolved over the days when you first started soon after your college?
Definitely. At the beginning, it was very much mostly focused on the B2C element. So it was focused on what the young renter needed. And then over time, as is with any marketplace, we realized as a team that in order to create the best experience for the young renter, we needed to find a way to lock in landlords and create a sticky landlord product. So especially this year, like the end of 2022 and 2023 has been all about creating a really sticky landlord product and building out that B2B element so we could retain landlords over a long period of time, really add value to them so that ultimately we can give that young renter the best experience. They can come onto the platform and find their dream accommodation.
Got it. Let's understand what is Hyper today in terms of, so there are, you call it a marketplace. What's the experience like? So I understood what the problem space is. Let's talk about your product and your solution space, right? So do you want to shed some light? Yeah.
HYBR is a curated rental platform that aggregates all available homes for young renters in one place. So we work with the biggest residential portfolios like Greystar, the biggest purpose-built student accommodation providers like Student Roost, IQ, as well as the biggest build-to-rent and co-living portfolios and HMO private landlords who work across all landlord profiles, aggregating all available homes, short-term tenancies, long-term tenancies. And ultimately, this means that students can come on and find the right home for them and get all the support and hand-holding that they need as that young renter. So they can access educational content, so how to prepare for a viewing, what is a guarantor, as well as any add-on service throughout that experience. So they access bills, included packages, content, insurance, anything they need, deposit replacement schemes, etc. And for landlords, we've built a matchmaking algorithm that takes into account our tenants' criteria and our landlord's requirements to match them together to optimize for a happy let. So we only send, rather than overwhelming our landlords with mostly ineligible inquiries, we only send over pre-vetted, reference engaged tenants that match what our landlords are looking for, slotting them into our landlords booking systems.
Lovely. So there is a matchmaking that is relevant matchmaking. That means you are not inundating these actors with just about any inquiries. And you are saying it is pre-vetted, engaged tenants. What does pre-vetting mean here?
Pre-vetting really depends on the landlord. It's usually looking at, so some buildings will be more undergraduate, they'll be young, there'll be ping pong tables, a fun environment, very social, and some buildings will be more mature, people in their final year of serious degrees, really want to knuckle down and focus on their career prospects, mixing with young professionals. So that really depends on the vibe of the building, and that depends on what the tenant is looking for, whether they want somewhere quiet to study or whether they want a more fun social environment. And then it looks at what is the referencing checks needed by the landlord in order to secure the booking. Does there need to be a UK guarantor? Does there need to be credit checks done on either the tenant or the guarantor, etc.? So really making sure that the tenant will be able to pass the booking referencing checks.
Got it. So just curious. So I'm not familiar with the student housing, university housing. Are there particular types of housing options that are available, or are the landlords today open for offering to it to not just families but also for youngsters? Like, what are the challenges do youngsters face? Are there only student housing which are categorized as student housing, or normal accommodations are also open for students these days?
We're really proud of the fact that we've been a category creator already because of our matchmaking algorithm and that superior experience, and because we really understand how to give our young renters the support and tools that they need to be great renters. We've brought on rooms to the market that have typically never been available to students before. So through this algorithm, through what the solution we're building for landlords, we've been able to bring on more properties to the student market, because it's very different whether you're renting to an undergraduate, someone in the middle of their degree, and a mature PhD student and a young professional. So we really have invited more landlords into the market. But yes, you have typical HMO that rents to students, where you can be living with 3+ friends in a house, flat share. And then you have purpose-built student accommodation, and then there's a whole load of other housing options we're bringing into the market.
So because of you, there are more options available to students which are otherwise out of reach for them. Am I right?
Exactly. And that's what we're building towards. So really wanting to help make more rooms available and also encourage mixed living. So students with young professionals, students with older retirees, to create the community, because it's not about who you are, it's about what you're looking for. And if that aligns, then you can create a really happy building. And in this housing crisis, there should be no voids. We should be making the most of every space.
So let's talk about experience, because I'm interested. Are you just a digital platform in matchmaking, or does your experience go beyond digital onto the physical spaces? So can you help us with the experience both on the landlord side and also a student side?
Of course. So as a student, you come on and you can filter, search, or contact our team if you can't find what you're looking for. Give us your criteria. We'll then send you over curated properties that are relevant for you. You create an account and you can store your key documents, access add-on services, talk to our customer success team if you have any concerns throughout that process. And then we'll start building up your profile. We might send you a WhatsApp to get any kind of data that we need from you in order to pass the landlord's referencing checks. And then you'll be sent over to the landlord for either instant booking, if there's video tours and Matterports, floor plans, or to facilitate a viewing. And then we will ensure that you can convert to a happy booker, or you'll be redirected towards other properties if that one was not a good fit for you. And then there's a review system so that we can ensure that you're happy throughout that stay, and we can always get you out of that contract tenancy agreement if you were not happy, with a replacement tenant service. Throughout that experience, there is educational videos, support, and a call center on hand whenever you need us.
Yes.
And for the landlords, you come on, we'd have API integration so that you don't need to do anything on your side. We can scrape all the data from your portfolio, advertise it across as many channels as you want access to, all the classified sites, international agents, social media, universities. But through our very high quality funnel, you'll only get access to pre-vetted, qualified tenants that fit your requirements. We'll help you facilitate viewings or do them online, and then we'll secure the bookings for you to ensure 100% occupancy all year round.
Got it. And what about, do you have any say on ensuring the actual experience within the accommodation? Like, do you play any role there, or how does it work out?
So we're not a full management agent, but through the review system that we're bringing in to really build trust in the marketplace, we can figure out how have you found that tenancy, how can we continue to optimize the algorithm to ensure a win-win, a happy tenancy on both sides. So we have close communication throughout the year to ensure that we can redirect you towards better property the next year, help you stay on if you loved your stay, or find something similar.
Got it. Just curious, when was HYBR started? How many years now in operations?
So I started it as a one-man band at the end of 2019, but we grew out a very strong community in Bristol. We broke even, we hired 2 people, scaled into 2 further cities because our landlords had other portfolios there. And then we raised a pre-seed at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, just under £1 million, to double down on the tech, ensure there was a scalable platform. And now we're about to close our seed round.
Yes. And how many? Let's talk about the size today with that pre-seed, and in the last 2 years or so. How many properties does your website has, and what's the size of the actors in your marketplace?
So we have 27,000 rooms on the platform. Most of these are going live from the next rental season, and we have access to 200,000 rooms across the UK. So when we start scaling, we're not starting from scratch, we're just turning on these rooms with the big institutional and private landlords, and we're growing the platform by 30% month on month. So we're in a really exciting period.
Nice. I'm also aware that this is a highly competitive space. Am I right? Because I was not aware. So I had one of my previous guests also from student housing. It's called University Living.
Yes.
You're aware of University Living. So he was on my. Yeah, exactly. So and then he told me about the massive potential of this industry, which I was not aware of. Now, my question to you is it a crowded place in the UK? And if it is, how are you finding your niche? Because the number of properties are the same, right? You do not grow it. So is it distributed across, or these are shared properties with different platforms? How does it work out?
So in the UK, we're the only platform that aggregates all available homes across the different property types. So you have classified sites like Rightmove that focuses on professional renters and focuses on letting agents, estate agents, properties. You have Open Rent that focuses on professional and families, that focuses on one type of supply, the HMO private supply. We focus across all supply so we can really build that go-to brand for the young renter, a £46 billion, a market worth 46 billion, I should say.
And how does it work out with competition? Like, is this the same properties are listed in different marketplaces? Is that how it is okay with, or how do you?
On each type of house might either be in an exclusive contract with HYBR, or they might be on another platform. But what we're slowly building up over time is more and more exclusivity with our landlords.
Got it. And how do you ensure integrity of information on whether a room is it based on bed or a room? What is the unit of a reservation? Is it person, bed, room? How's it?
So you can rent a house, a 10-bed house with 10 friends. You can
I
rent
see.
a 4-bed house. You can rent a 1-bed. You can join a house share. Really depends.
And how do you ensure integrity of information on whether there is an occupancy, and when that occupancy is empty, and like are there APIs that are with the landlords and stuff like that? How do you ensure that integrity of information and accuracy of information?
API integrations in place, or found a way yeah, basically, to keep it simple, API integrations.
And so that do have a front end, the landlords have a front end where they need to update, or how does it work out, or there are operators, intermediate operators somewhere?
Both, depending on the size of the landlord and the way the landlords like to work.
Got it. Excellent. And it's only in UK today, right? So this is primarily your focus, and there's enough business for you for a couple of years. Am I right, or are you looking beyond UK as well?
So we're going to raise our Series A at the end of next year, beginning in 2025. And at that point, we'll either double down on one of our add-on services for our community, depending what the community wants, or we'll look at scaling internationally.
Nice. So this is a business podcast, and a lot of newbie entrepreneurs are listening to this. Help us understand these stages between pre-seed, seed, and Series A. Can you plan your Series A, because you're saying that you are raising your seed and then Series A next year. Can you plan your Series A right away, or is it primarily when the right opportunity comes, where you see that you have run out of your runway and stuff like that? Could you help us understand that dynamic of fundraising stages in running a business like this?
Of course. So we're going for break even at the end of next year. So that's we want to raise our Series A until we've broken even and we show them we're really a profitable, scalable model.
Got it.
And that will allow us to raise the best Series A that we can raise with the best VCs to back us. So what we're doing is we spent already this seed round getting to know the best, pan-European VCs who really understand our niche and market, who we're really excited to work with, and we've already built those relationships. So now what we're going to do is 6 months before we ideally want to raise our Series A, we'll start keeping these investors up to date, going for coffee with them, really bringing them into the story and how much we've grown since we've last spoken, and then kind of keep them on at least a once a quarter update, so that they're warmed up before we want to raise a Series A.
Got it. And when you do a seed round, is it for how many months? Is it for a year, 12 to 16 months? Is that the right time frame?
And just to make sure everyone understood the question, you mean how long is the money going to last us, or how long did it take to raise?
No. So when you raise a seed round, that seed round will be, how much time will you, what's the runway for you to use up that money? Okay, so you must have planned, right? So you are raising this round for the surviving for the next 12 months or 18 months. How does this work out?
Mostly we'll try and make it 18 plus months,
Got
but
it.
because we're going for break even, it's indefinite, but it's mostly 18 months, and then we'll try and go for break even.
And usually, do you raise exactly the amount of money you need for the next 18 months, or do you do a 2x, just so that you have some extra cash for something that you have not imagined today? Maybe you want to buy out a competitor, a small competitor, or something of that sort. Is this a multiple of the cost, or is it exactly the planned expenses for the next 18 months?
We always raise a buffer, so we're raising it just over a kind of 600K buffer. As you said, you never quite know, you might want to double down on one of the growth channels that are working really well. So Islam allows us to grow faster, and endure anything that comes our way.
Excellent. Thank you. That was helpful to know, because I was talking to a VC yesterday, and they said that they are stringent about exact cost. They do not want to give as much buffer, because again, the more you raise, the more you have to dilute yourself. So it was an accelerator, and it's a trade-off, right? So good. So that is good. Let's talk about your business model. Yeah, how do you make money, and what's the best business model that you have figured out on your journey?
So this is a constantly iterating, and you need lots of customer feedback and to work out, how you can build a sustainable business. For us, it's free for our young renters. We don't charge them anything. The only time we ever charge them is when they want to pay us for our replacement tenant service to exit a tenancy that they're not happy with. And then our landlords, they pay us on successful booking. So every time we secure a booking, they pay us a percentage of the annual rent or the first month's rent, depending on the size of that portfolio.
What's the standard? Is this how the competitors also do, or is this something that you do uniquely, this pricing model?
This is really quite usual for the sector. We like to ensure, because we have a very low cost operating model, what I mean by that is we built an automated scalable model. It means that we can afford to be more affordable for our landlords. And why this is important to us is that we think that because our landlords are being squeezed for their margins year on year, that's been driving rents increasing by over 10% year on year, which is making it very unaffordable for our young renters. So we're really passionate about keeping our costs low so that our landlords don't need to keep on increasing their rents as
Got it.
much as we've seen in the last few years.
Yeah, housing affordability is a big problem, especially in the UK. I'm aware of, and
Definitely.
you are being responsible there, and as a result, you're keeping the costs low so that you do not transfer the brunt of this onto the renters who are especially low on cash, low on wallet, isn't it?
Exactly.
Um, so, so what's the standard like? I mean, you don't have to reveal your percentages, but for an annual successful booking, what usually are the margins that you get from the landlords?
So in the purpose-built student accommodation world, they that's very much set from the big PBS purpose-built student accommodation operators. So they typically charge, they're pretty happy to pay out from 3% to 10% of the annual rent, depending on the level of demand in that city and their marketing budgets. So that very much flexes depending on their own marketing budget, their own incentives, and then the international agents that they work with follow suit. We set our own prices and we're very consistent across our different landlord profiles. It just depends on how big that landlord's marketing budget is, because we're always focused on being that scalable, sustainable option for them.
Got it. So you mentioned successful booking commission, which I understand. Are there other revenue channels? Like you mentioned about additional services on your platform and stuff like that.
Definitely. So every time, it's all about just adding value to your community. So every time a young renter rents through us and they want access to a bills included package, content insurance, any relevant add-on, then they can come back to us and request it. And that is another revenue stream for HYBR. In the same way, on the landlord side, every time they want to pay for additional referencing checks, inventories, contracts, a rent collection, then that is a revenue stream for HYBR. But it's all about how can we add the most value to both sides, to be creating that really sticky solution.
Got it. And these additional services are one-time purchases, right? Or are there subscription also on these services?
We don't have a subscription because, again, this isn't feedback we've got from our users. So at the moment, it's one-off payment, so it's very affordable and easy to kind of add on or exclude depending on what they need.
Right. So there is no subscription model in your business. Uh, so is it, how do you gain predictability of revenue, like especially when you're talking to your investors? How do you show predictability? Is it an extrapolation of your past business and your growth, and then you extrapolate? Is that how the conversation is?
Exactly. We have a 98% landlord retention rate and
Hmm.
194% landlord GMV retention rate, meaning not only are we retaining landlords, but they're growing their businesses with us. So
Nice.
that really just shows the again, the kind of trust we built with both sides of the market. And then we're seeing high retention rates on the young renter side as well, because we're retaining them through universities in that first year, and then we're looking after them, holding their hands with that trusted confidant as they graduate.
Nice. And so since how many players must be in UK in this space, just to know a sense of the competition? Are there like single digits or multiple digits? How many players are there?
there's there's only passive classified sites. So the
Hmm.
single digit players, the only other people in our space are classified sites where you pay an upfront marketing subscription and they're not focused on our niche demographic. So we've only probably got two other players in the UK that focus on our demographic, and they have different business models to us.
So when you say focused, what is your differentiation? Okay, what is your value proposition than anyone else?
It's
Maybe.
just focusing on the young renter. So it's focusing on students and young graduates. That's our niche.
Got it. And there are not many players in that niche. Got
Not
it.
in the UK.
Not in the UK. Excellent. Cool. So let's talk about yeah. As I said, this is a business podcast, right? Most the biggest as thing about running any business is the growth trajectory, and I often ask my founders to share some insights of what has worked for them in
Mm.
their growth stories. So if you could shed some light, give some gyan or insights to our audience on what strategies have worked for you for growth and scale, maybe from your early days, like how did you capture market share and stuff like that. Was it through promotions? Because usually with the new founders, they do not have a lot of marketing budget and stuff like that, and often people are more creative to get these growth going. So what are some of the strategies that have worked for you?
So in the early days, it was all about really piggybacking off where the community is already hanging out. So for us in the early days, that was Facebook groups. So using organic channels like Facebook groups to build up a community and go directly to where people were discussing the pain points you're solving for, to access your target customers and start bringing them onto your platform and supporting them. So Facebook groups were a huge growth lever for us in the early days, as well as press speaking up about, again, because this is an underserved market and there was not enough people focusing on building a solution for this space. It meant that we could really talk about what we were doing, how much we cared about, building this much needed solution and how we can create a win-win. And this ultimately got us a lot of press, which also helped us grow in the early days.
Got it. And then later, is it a lot of digital marketing? Like how do you ensure that you get organic traffic to your website post hanging out in the communities that you mentioned as Facebook groups?
Definitely, it's partnerships are key. Finding strategic partnerships where you're both aligned on supporting a community and you can put your integrate your solutions to better support your target market. These we found the best ways for us to grow, as well as there's so many good tools out there to really utilize platforms like LinkedIn to access your community. And it's really important of who the first investors you bring on board. Our
Hmm.
angel investors have been a massive support because they're all real estate angels. So they have a
Got it.
huge network that we can tap into.
Got it. You mentioned about partnerships. So what kind of partnerships, other than of course investor partnerships, what kind of partnerships would be helpful to you in this business?
International agents like University Living, Uniaco, as well as universities themselves and any educational ed tech platform out there, educational service, where you're just finding people in your space that are serving the same community as you.
Is university living a competitor to you, or are they functioning in a different business altogether?
Partnerships. We partner together.
Yeah, but are they in the same business as you, or are they a different business? Like, are they a competitor to you? Are they in direct competition to your business?
They're our partner. So they supply us with their students who want to come to the UK and we find them UK accommodation.
Got it. That's why they're partners. Excellent, cool. And then you mentioned about you have high retention. What is the secret sauce for you? Like, is it how did you gain that trust, and why you have been successful in retention?
So on the landlord side, it's just about constant communication with what are their expectations when they join the platform? What do they want from the platform? How can you ensure that they know that you're with an early stage business, you're building the solution with them in mind? Continue to listen to them and build new features that can give them a better experience and going out of our way to even when doing things that don't scale in the early days to give them that best experience that we can give them. And then on the young renter side, it's really helping them bring them into the story, helping them understand what we're building, why we care about this mission, so that they can bear with us in the early days as we're trying to build out the platform and get material scale.
Got it. Let's now talk about your journey. I'm sure it has not been all hunky dory. Okay, you have achieved a lot, but usually any startup journey is a lot of roller coaster ride. So let's talk about the highs and the lows in this journey. So do you want to shed some light on which were the high parts on your journey and not so great parts, and the lessons that you learned in that journey?
For sure. The high parts are always hearing directly from the young renters, the people who we supported. For example, we supported young people who had been turned away by traditional agents and platforms because they didn't have UK guarantors. They came from low income backgrounds. They were international students without any family members in the UK on scholarships, or they were from the kind of foster care system in the UK, were estranged from their parents. And all these groups of people who had no other option, we've managed to build up a case using one of our guarantor replacement schemes that is entirely free for young people and help them find the right accommodation. And those are the really special moments that make you grateful for what you're building and why it reminds you why what you're doing is so important. And then on a business element, in the early days, well, still now, we're always kind of participating in young entrepreneurial competitions, startup competitions, within our property space, and winning these awards is just always such an ode to what our team are doing and why, again, building within an underserved market is so important, because everyone has experienced the pain points that we're solving for, and why it's such a big opportunity to build a platform that really cares about young renters. And then in terms of difficult points within the journey, we scaled too fast. As soon as we raised our pre-seed, we did the classic thing of hiring 10 people and scaling into 8 cities before we had product market fit, before our platform was truly automated and scalable, which meant we would have had to spend a lot more on very manual processes to really hit the material scale we needed in each of those cities to capture material market share. So we had to make that hard decision of scaling back, doubling down on 2 cities to show real product market fit and growth. So that was the very classic lesson learned. No matter how many books you read that warns you to not overhire and not grow before you're ready and before you've really got that automated scalable model, it's hard to learn through others and not make that mistake yourself.
Got it. And running businesses in these days is the best lessons for entrepreneurs, because this is where you are forced to become capital efficient and running lean businesses. I mean, I get a lot of pitch decks from startup founders in PropTech space, and there's a fresh change that I see. There is one slide deck which talks about capital efficiency, which was not there in all these days. So I get what you're saying. I'm very, very curious to know about you as a person, as an entrepreneur. So for somebody who has built this from scratch, what do you think are your strengths as a businesswoman, as an entrepreneur, as a leader? So what has worked for you, and what have you figured and unraveled about yourself?
I think you have to be, very passionate. You have to be very driven and really believe in what you're building and be obsessed with your users. So it comes from just, utterly obsession, and passion is so important. Otherwise, you're not able to be working these long days and give it your absolute all through the hardest times. So I think passion and that kind of obsession with what the problem you're solving for is super key. I think being self-aware and being able to differentiate between, what something is, but you might be taking just personally, and what's actually a problem. I think it's really important to be able to reflect and say, how could I have done better? How am I at fault? I think that's super important to be a good leader, to see how can you keep on creating the best environment for everyone to excel, and always look at yourself first before trying to judge anyone else. And lastly, I think it's just the hustle and thinking outside the box and being as creative as possible. And I think that's the bit I enjoy the most.
So were there influences in your life which led you to start a business right away? I'm very curious. I have not planned to ask these questions, but I'm always curious for people who just straight away start their first businesses soon out of university. Were there influences around you that led you to begin your business?
So I didn't really think about this until recently, but my mum was involved in a failed startup when I was growing up, and I used to participate in a lot of the events. It was a healthy sports drink ahead of its time, and I loved being a part of that journey. And I think that was probably right inspirational when I was younger. and it didn't work out. But again, it just shows you that it's okay to fail. And I think starting right after university is the best time to start a business, because there's really no risk involved. Everyone's finding their feet, everyone's doing masters, going traveling, and so you are really able to give it your all. And if it at the beginning days it didn't work, I could have moved on to something else. But once you've got that bug, there's no chance that you're not going to make it work.
Nice. And when you're starting, I'm sure you did not have all the answers. Okay, usually you jump and then open the parachute. So did you have a support system around you? Like, did you have mentors? Like with investors coming in, I'm sure you're getting some support. But early on, did you have a set of mentors or somebody to help you around?
The very early days, so my brother was a BCG consultant, and then he went over to be the CEO of Jumia, which is Africa's first kind of tech unicorn. And only recently is he also started his own business, and so he's been a big mentor to me. His wife also is an entrepreneur and started her own business. So it's been great having those influences, and I'm really watching and learning from them.
Excellent. I also want to dig a little deeper on the self-awareness and self-reflection that you mentioned. Okay, you come across as somebody who is self-aware. I've spoken to you for the last 35 minutes. It comes across. What do you do? I just want to, because I do not just want to superficially talk about this. What do you do to get better? And is there a process that you follow for self-reflection? Like, do you block your time in a week saying that, okay, what were the kind of conversations that were hard and what are the lessons I'm going to learn? And how do you consciously and deliberately improve and change yourself?
Amazing book called Radical Candor. I'm going to
Mm.
forget who it's from. It's from Kim. I've actually got it here. Kim Scott. Radical Candor.
Yeah.
It's such an amazing book. I 100% recommend it. I think she's absolutely brilliant and just amazing at understanding and managing teams. That's such an important framework to follow. But then I think it's mostly just, I don't block out time, but it's just as soon as you feel strongly or going through a difficult period, to make taking those moments to really reflect on what you could have done better, so you're continuously able to kind of grow as a person and as a like the founder. It is always on your shoulders. It is really always you then that has to take that responsibility, and not constantly learn from your mistakes.
Got it. So, as any visionary founder, you do not look at your immediate roadmap. You are always scanning the horizon on how this world or this space is shaping up, right? So, could you shed some light on how this entire student housing world is shaping? Do you see any changes, any tectonic shifts that would happen in the next 3-4 years?
Definitely. What we're seeing is you have purpose-built student accommodation, which are the very more expensive premium products, studios, one beds, used to really mostly cater for international students. And then you have the HMO private landscape, which are run by mum and pops types landlords. But what we're seeing is actually both sides starting to meet in the middle. So HMO is under a lot of pressure to become a better type of product, in terms of really shape up the way that they're managed, and have higher standards for the typical HMO house. And the PBSA are under pressure that they can't keep on increasing their rents, and that maybe people don't need the additional tennis courts and cinema rooms if they're not being used. Instead, they can make the rent a bit more affordable, make the rooms a little bit larger, etc. So we're starting to see more product that sits in the middle, which is more affordable, higher end, better standards, really resetting the standards of the student accommodation market. And we're a big believer in how there should be more of these kind of affordable but well looked after, well maintained, high quality accommodation options. And again, a really increased use of mixed use development, so mixed living, so that you have people who are in the elder parts of their lives and young people living together to decrease loneliness, encourage more of a community, and help young people also integrate more in their local communities, so there's not such a tension between new students entering a market and the locals who have been living there. So I think there's so much more we can do to create that community aspect and focus more on affordability and better standards.
Excellent. On the future of HYBR, where do you see yourself in the next? So what's the future in the next 1, 2, 3 years? Like, what's your ambition? Where do you want to be and stuff like that?
We want to be the go-to platform so that when you're in your last years of high school, sixth form, and you're trying to compare your university options and think about where you want to live, you have all of the educational resources, all of the rental guides, tips and tricks to help you on that adulting, on that new path of life you're about to embark on. And then you arrive at university, you can filter and search for all the houses that are available, really helping bring on more affordable houses to the market, short-term and long-term tenancies, that complete flexibility. You can find housemates, any add-on service, and have everything you need in one place. Whilst on the B2B side, we're problem solving to be a digital first leasing strategy, so we can help make their letting teams more efficient. And we're really ensuring 100% occupancy all year round, so there's never any voids in this market. That will be in the UK, and then we'll surely scale into Europe and the US.
Excellent. Well, this brings us to the end of a very fascinating conversation with Hannah. Hannah, we started the conversation with a bit of a technical snag, but it ended on a high. And I completely enjoyed talking to you. You come across as somebody very, very strongly grounded to be a leader and an entrepreneur. So thank you for sharing also your mindsets and explaining us and giving us a lowdown on the industry and your own business. So that was very, very helpful, and I hope my audience will also like it. Thanks again for being on my show, Hannah.
Thank you so much for having me.